Dr. Crystal Downing, the co-director of the Marion E. Wade Center, along with my husband, Dr. David Downing, and we are delighted to welcome you here tonight for the celebration of the 150th birthday of G.K. Chesterton. Tonight's introduction to Chesterton is co-sponsored by the Wheaton College Summer Institute, as well as the Muriel Fuller Endowment for the Arts and the Imagination, which is a part of the Wade Center, which, by the way, if you have never been there, it is the most comprehensive archive in the world for materials by and about C.S. Lewis and 6 of his influences, several of which drew Lewis to faith after being a hardened atheist. And one of the important influences was a book that G.K. Chesterton wrote in 1925 called The Everlasting Man, which revolutionized Lewis's view of the importance and the historical situatedness of the incarnation. Now, another one of the authors at the Wade is Dorothy L. Sayers, and she wrote a series of radio plays about Jesus that not only brought thousands of people to Christ, but that C.S. Lewis thought was so profound that he read it every single year as part of his Easter devotions for 20 years until he died. I mention her because she helped Chesterton begin the Detection Club in London, and Chesterton was known for his Father Brown stories, Sayers for her Lord Peter Wimsey stories. But also, when Chesterton died in 1936, Sayers wrote his widow to say these words: "G.K.'s books have become more a part of my mental makeup than those of any writer you could name." And she told others that she probably would not be a Christian if it weren't for G.K. Chesterton. Portraying this amazing man, this great man in more ways than one, is John Walker, who is not only professor of theater at Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio, but also an award-winning actor who has performed in theater, television, and film from London to Hollywood. And I think I hear him approaching now. G.K. Chesterton.
Pets have no reason. Oh, I must have the wrong door. No? I'm terribly sorry for interrupting what seems to be a very formal event. Perhaps this takes some explaining. I was traveling on a train, you see, on a very long journey. Knowing it was going to be a very long journey, I packed a cigar. But I can't find the blessed thing. Well, I suppose some people would call that absent-minded. I prefer to think of it as presence of mind elsewhere. And so when the train stopped, I thought I would get out and come into the station to look for that cigar. However, when I came into the door, I found myself here, which is not a train station at all. Yes, well, I'm sorry. You must be naturally puzzled why I am taking up this space, let alone so much space. Yes, that was funny. Well, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Gilbert Keith Chesterton, and I am dead. Oh yes, quite dead. I died June 14th, 1936. But I do believe that God, in his all-loving mercy, has allowed me to travel this purgatorial plane by train. One of my favorite modes of transportation, you see. I believe God understood that I would be most comfortable on a train and most comforted by a train. Yes, well, I suppose I could unpack my things and find my way here. You know, this is very strange. Now that you know who I am, I really don't know who you are. Well, I suppose you could be a figment of my imagination, and I am talking to myself. Well, if a fellow doesn't talk to himself, he's not worth talking to, right? Well, if you are a figment of my imagination, you are most welcome. We shall share this plane of existence together. The imagination is a thing of clear images, after all. You know, I've often been dumb that imagination is not a central topic of education. The imagination is the greatest gift of the mind our Lord has given us to make us a little more like him, the divine creator. Yes. And the Christian imagination soars higher than all the rest, because the Christian imagination understands at its very depth that things are not what they seem, but are far more mysterious and far greater. That every great truth is a paradox. For instance, the last shall be first. Paradox. The enemy must be loved. Paradox. The instrument of gruesome death and torture, the Roman cross, will be held up as a sign of selfless love and hope. And the little baby, wrapped up in swaddling clothes, laying in a feeding trough on a bed of hay, unable to lift its head, in a dark, dank, abject cave of a stable, shall become the king of heaven. You know, it occurs to me the purpose of imagination is not so much as to make wonders facts, but to make facts wonders. And I wonder, with me up here and you out there, this resembles a theater of sorts. I do love the theater, you know. One of my very first memories was of a theater. My father built for me a little toy theater out of colored pasteboard and paint. It was the most remarkable thing. It had blue painted goblins to cheer the heart of George MacDonald, vibrantly painted scenery of castles and dragons. And one scene I remember called out to my young mind in the nursery, like an open window into a world of storytelling and drama. You see, inside my little theater, when I was a child, I saw this little figure of a man. He was wearing a golden crown, carrying a sword, on a golden key, and he walked with an air of confidence verging on swagger. He had a curly mustache, And he was crossing a very perilous bridge across a dangerous gorge. And on the other side of that gorge was an impossible castle. And in that castle there was one window. And in that window, in the tower, there was one beautiful maiden watching him approach. I really don't know what she looked like. But I will do battle with anyone that denies her beauty. What he was to do with that key or that sword, I don't know. But I believe that was the sight upon which my eyes first opened onto the world. My first memory. I suppose it will be my last memory when all others have flitted away like a fluttering candle. You know, it occurs to me, if this is a theater, perhaps you are expecting me to perform for you. Right. I do love the theater. I often thought I would have been a brilliant actor. Never really got the chance, although we put on plays in my home all the time. But let's see now. What shall we do? Well, you know, if imagination is to set sail, a theater is the perfect port for it to set sail from. Theater is rife with imagination. It assails the imagination. It's the very forge and working house of imagination. Any man, woman, dog, cat, or common vegetable can understand that. Let's see. Shakespeare, then. All right. Shakespeare it is. Let me see. Shakespeare. Right. Do you bite your thumb at me, sir? I do bite my thumb. Yes, but do you bite your thumb at me, sir? Have at you for a rat catcher, Tybalt! You. That might be too dramatic for the children. Here, let me try something else. Perhaps a song, eh? Would you like to hear a song? Good heavens. I was not expecting such an enthusiastic response. Let me see. Song, which one? Oh, I know. This song was written by myself and a very good friend of mine, Hilaire Belloc. Belloc had much more to do with making me who I am than I had to do with making him Belloc. We wrote this song in a pub, our favorite place to work. I do believe Belloc had several pints of ale while he wrote this song. Or perhaps I had several pints of ale. To tell you the truth, I really can't remember. Suffice it to say, young man, that several pints of ale were consumed in the writing of the song. It is called the Pelagius drinking song. It is about the heretic Pelagius and the bishop of Old Auxerre who crushes his heresy. Well, I suppose there's nothing more than to do it, right? Well, anything worth doing is worth doing badly, as you are about to see. Let me get prepared. There we go. Right. Pelagius lived at Coronel and taught a doctrine there. However you went to heaven or hell, it was your own affair. However you sought eternal joy or sank forever to burn, it had nothing to do with the church, my boy, but was your own concern. He didn't believe in Adam and Eve, he put no faith therein. His doubts began with the fall of man. Didn't expect that, did you? And he laughed at original sin with a roti-toti-toodle-oo. He laughed at original sin. Then came the bishop of Old Auxerre, Germanus was his name. He tore great handfuls out of his hair, and he called Pelagius shame. And with his stout episcopal staff, so thoroughly whacked and banged, the heretics all both short and tall, he rather had been hanged. He whacked them hard and he banged them long on each and all occasion, till they bellowed in chorus, loud and strong. Yeah. Their orthodox persuasions with a roti-toti-toodle-oo. Their orthodox persuasions now. The faith is old and the devil is bold, exceedingly bold indeed. And the masses of doubt that are floating about could smother a mortal creed. But we who live in sturdy youth and still can drink strong ale, oh, we put it away to infallible truth that always shall prevail. And thank the Lord for the temporal sword and howling heretics too, and every good thing that Christendom brings, especially barley brew with a roti-toti toodly-o, especially barley brew. Thank you. I think I worked up quite a thirst on that. Let me see, I might have something in here. Always travel prepared. Let's see what we have. Okay, all right. Oh no, that's upside down. Yeah. There we go. Oh, that's much better. Now it's all upside down. And there's not that. Not this. Oh, here we are. Oh, this is just my letter opener. No worries. Here we are. If I can dig it out from the pile. Bottle of stout. Eh? Very good. It's medicinal. It's quite good, but I think I need something to eat with it. Oh, I know. Just happen to have in my pocket a piece of cheese. Oh, pardon me for eating in front of you. I simply must build up my stamina. Where are you, you little... There you are. Oh. That is a good Stilton. Yeah, it's very strange. Poets color the world with words, but they have been strangely silent on the subject of cheese. I don't know why. Well, you see, it's necessary for me to continue my diet and maintain my shape, you see. No, fatness is a very valuable asset to have in developing humility. Yes, it's true. If there's one thing I disagree with in the monastic institutions of old, was that they sought to find humility through emaciation. Well, I tell you, I'm sure there were thin monks who were holy, but it was the fat ones who were humble. Okay, Falstaff said, to be fat is not to be hated, but it is to be laughed at. And you cannot be fat in secret. No. Believe me, I know. Every day, my corpulence is laughed at by little children in the street whenever I try to bend down and tie my shoe, or chase after my hat, or squeeze into a booth at the pub. And you know, I think the laughter of children is a very wholesome thing for one's humility. Hey, I'll tell you a story about being fat. One time, when I was in America, I wasn't there for long. It was during your prohibition, so I spent much time in Canada. I was doing a lecture series at Notre Dame. You call it something else. You say Notre Dame, correct? In South Bend, Indiana. Indiana. Can't understand. Now, I'm quite comfortable with names in New England. Tewksbury, Concord, Lexington, Chelmsford. Those names are familiar to me. But somewhere in your country, they stopped using the old names and came up with things like Albuquerque, Dallas, Choctaw. It's almost like you ran out of letters, just started assembling letters together in consonants. Anyway, the story of Notre Dame. So I was guest lecturing there I think I was guest lecturing because they were hoping I would leave. But I never kept any notes, which really disappointed them. And anyway, every night, the chauffeur of the university, Mr. Johnny Mangan, would drive me over to the auditorium where I would lecture. Now, getting into the vehicle was no problem at all. It was simply gravity. But getting out of the vehicle was an entirely different thing. I remember one day the driver said to me, Mr. Chesterton, why don't you try getting out of the car sideways? I told him, I don't have a sideways. I am spherical like a globe. I am 6'4", but what my circumference is has never been accurately measured. And so I began to rock back and forth in the car, trying to build up some momentum to be able to get out. And as I did this, the car began to lurch back to side and side to side, squealing on its hinges. And people would begin to gather for the lecture, would stop and stare at this unique car that was juggling back and forth on itself. And when they saw it was me trying to get out, they would cheer me on. And so I continued to thrust myself back and forth, until finally I propelled myself enough momentum to shoot out of the car like a champagne cork out of a bottle and land on my feet. And when I did, a great cheer went up among the crowd, as if they had just witnessed the launching of a new battleship. If that does not do something for your humility, I don't know what does. Well, I suppose I'm not a very tidy person. But I generally know where all my things are, as long as I keep them out of my pockets. Yes, once they disappear into those bottomless caverns, I wave them a sad Virgilian farewell. I suppose the things I put in my pockets are still there. I hold the same presumption for the things I have dropped into the sea. But I regard both items in those bottomless caverns with reverent ignorance. Let's see. Let's empty out the pockets. Maybe I'll find that dratted cigar. More of you later. There. Oh, puppets. Yes, very important. You never know when you might be on a third-class rail carriage with children. And children enjoy puppet shows. Ah! I am the dragon of despair. I have come to exit all your dreams and fill them with despair and lack of hope and lack of faith. I am the archangel, and I have come with the armor of God to stab you down. You cannot kill me. I am the dragon of despair. I have the armor of God. Children always enjoy that. Let's see what else I have. It's just a train schedule. Might as well be a treasure map. I really can't understand all these letters and numbers. I wish it were a treasure map, because then there would be an X to mark the spot. Oh, string. Yes. Oh, toy soldier. Very important. Oh, feather. Oh, I know where that should go. Right in the hat. There. Snappy. Tickety-boo. All right. Oh, there's more. Oh, what's all these things? Oh, used train tickets. Yes. Like confetti, eh? All right. Oh, pocket knife. Very important. For puncturing a cigar so you can smoke it. House keys. Long gave up any hope of ever seeing those again. Let's see. Oh, no. Oh, yes. Dandelion. Oh, and a piece of chalk. Oh, look. And something else I found. My gun. It's not loaded. I don't think it's ever been loaded. You see, on my wedding day, my wife and I decided to honeymoon at the western coast of England, home to all the legendary smugglers' caves of the ancient pirates. And so, on our way to the coast, I stopped at a shop and picked up a revolver. It is my duty as her husband to be chivalrous, and I wanted to be ready with a suitable shooting iron if any villainous character walked into the Admiral Benbow at tea time. I've kept it all this time, you see. It's very handy. You see, if I'm ever having an argument with an atheist, yes, who says, Chesterton, I would rather be dead than Christian. I say, all right, well, very well, hold still. You would be surprised how quickly they change their point of view when confronted with the truth of their boast. Oh, here is something you should never leave hearth and home without. Book of fairy tales. And in this case, the Brothers Grimm. The things I most believed then are the things I most believe now. And those things are fairy tales. Fairy tales are not fantastical stories. They are the sunny country of common sense, rolled up into adventurous tales. And so you have the story of Cinderella, which is really the Magnificat, the lowly being exalted and the proud made low. You have Jack the Giant Killer. The giants should be killed because they are gigantic, like a tyrannical government denying your freedom. And then you have Beauty and the Beast. The thing must be lovable before it can be loved. You know, if you really read fairy tales from one end to the other, you will discover that one theme runs through every one of them. The happiness of fairyland hangs upon one condition, a single thread. For instance, Cinderella may have a dazzling dress of unearthly brilliance, but she must be home by midnight. That is the condition. The king may invite the fairies to the christening, but he must not be prideful and parsimonious. He must invite all the fairies. Bluebeard's wife is given a box, told not to open it. She does, and all the evils of the world rush out at her. See, fairy tales are not responsible for breeding in children fear of dragons. Children already know dragons exist. No, fairy tales teach children the courage to slay the evil that threatens the sacred order from without. You know, the one attribute that attracts most normal adults to children is the same attribute that attracts children to fairy tales, a sense of wonder. If you read a fairy tale to a boy of 7 about another boy who goes through a door and finds a dragon, that boy of 7 will naturally wonder how the dragon got in there. You read the same story to a boy of 3, and he will wonder how the boy in the story opened the door. Children are always gifted with a sense of wonder. But we must always remember, when you see those babies in their prams, with their enormous bulbous heads, 3 times the size of their human body, the mark of these human mushrooms, you must always remember that inside each one of those heads is a new universe, a new sky, a new sea, a new grass, a new field, as new as it was on the 7th day of creation. For the child often sees a thing as if they are seeing it for the very first time. And very often they are. It's as if the universe were a gift given to the child on his birthday that he will continue opening for the rest of his life. And we adults, jaded as we are, we stop in delight. As a child, delightfully wondering at the flower or the clouds or the caterpillar or the stars in heaven. And we gladly walk by without either looking down or up. But it is this wonder of a child which is how you must see your world. You must not become complacent by the miraculous nature of your very life. You could have been a turtle. or giraffe. But you know, I think the most endearing thing about children is their sense of humor. And they love your reoccurrence. I think the sense of humor of a child is the one endearing bond that holds the entire cosmos together. A child will often say to adults, "Do it again, do it again." They love reoccurrence and repetition, to which the uncle or the aunt tries very hard to get up and do the thing they did before that brought such utter revelry to the child. I wonder if that is the same merriment our Lord feels when he says to the sun every morning, "Do it again." Or to the moon at night, "Do it again." That's very good. I have to write that down. If I don't keep it in ink, I don't keep it. Let me see. Here. There we have it. Something for Father Brown to say to Flambeau. Here we are. Do it again, do it. Ink. You know, before I ever was a journalist, I wanted to be an illustrator for the London Times. No, seriously, when all my friends went off to Oxford and Cambridge, I was completely possessed with the idea of doodling, drawing pictures. I see your dismay and shock. Well, very well then. I shall draw you a picture right now. Oh, this will take a little time, this will take a little work. I must put the picture right, otherwise you think I'm wrong. Here we go with little things, here we go with colored. Little tie, little vest, paintbrushes, shoe falling off, very good. Little corner, there we are. Almost done, there it is, see? I'm an artist. Yes. It's just me off to art school. Art school. Oh, art school. The Slade School of Art in London. Little did I know that when I entered those hallowed halls, I would be doing much more than studying art. I would be doing battle for my very soul. Well, God is always writing the story of our lives. He rarely gives us the chapter titles ahead of time. No, art school was not where I was to soar on the wings of creativity. It's where I was to do battle between good and evil. The white flag and the red flag. There is no compromise in this battle. There is no pink flag. You must make a decision which one you will follow in your life. And once you make that decision, you must live with it for the rest of your life. Maybe this takes a little explaining. So this time in London was fascinated by the occult and the supernatural. There were seances held everywhere. There were mediums on call to come to your house to help you speak to the dead. The Queen herself held seances in Windsor Castle. There were magazines on the occult. There were newsletters. There were clubs. There were Ouija boards in almost every home. My own home had a Ouija board in the basement, buried behind some things. My brother Cecil and I took it out one time to play with it, conjure spirits. It's a devilish thing, that Ouija board, seemingly simple. But something very strange happened to my brother and I will never forget, and I don't really like to talk about. But I believe we opened a door that day, a door through which the devil could peer in at us. Also in art school, I was surrounded with a very different sort of young man. Men who were very idle and different for idle reasons than my own. And when you find yourself going about with a bunch of cads and idiots, getting drunk every night and staying up all night talking about things, you always find that there's one of them who is worse than a cad and not an idiot. One of them, though he can talk foul triviality with his friends, can also argue politics with a socialist or philosophy with a Christian. And such a man was someone who I became very close to at that time. We would stay up very late at night, arguing about Milton and Gothic architecture. But where he went in the midnight hours, I dare not speculate. There was one conversation we did have, though, that I have never forgotten. You see, it was a very cold, wintry evening. A bleak winter's night. And this friend of mine, he brought me up to these steps, these very wide stone steps like St. Paul's, that went up, 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 to a door to a building on our campus. It was a cold and dark night. There was not a star in the sky. All there was down below a little fire that the groundskeeper had put together of twigs and brushes. And every once in a while, a little spark would fly out of that and up into the night sky. We stood there for a very long time, which was uncommon. He generally liked to do all the talking. And he suddenly turned to me. He said, "Chesterton, why are you becoming Orthodox?" Until he said it, I had no idea that I was. But once he said it, I knew it to be true. I didn't know what to say. So I said the first thing that came into my mind. I said, "I am becoming Orthodox because I have come to the old belief, rightly or wrongly, after stretching my brain till it bursts, that I believe heresy is worse than sin. And I hate this new nihilism because it's dangerous." "Dangerous," he said. "You mean dangerous to morality?" "Well, I suppose you're right, old boy. But what do you care about morality, Chesterton?" I felt like I was being tempted in the desert. I wanted to come up with something important to say, but I couldn't think of the words. He looked at me in his soft, affable, friendly way. And suddenly a spark flew up between us, and I began to speak. Words that seemed familiar to me somehow. You know, as a child, when you travel down a little path in the woods, and you go back to it later as an adult, and you still remember that trail somehow. So I said to him, "Do you see that spark in the night sky? Is it not beautiful?" "Yes," he said. "Splendid." I said, "That is all I ask of you, that there is beauty in the world." You see, once I thought like you, that all pleasure was free for the taking and could come and go like that spark. But I knew very soon that that spark is only a flower on a stalk of living virtues, and it will die without virtues. Seduce and ruin a woman, that spark will go out. Shed blood, that spark will seem like a piece of neglected paper. Do something really bad, and that spark will seem to you like ash. And that is why I hate this new nihilism, because it denies beauty, and it is evil. He looked at me and laughed. And then, after a long pause, he turned to me and said, "Well, I suppose you're right, old boy. Except, if I ruin a woman, and that spark goes out because of my evil, the spark may be gone, but not the ever-expanding pleasure of evil." You see, the problem, Chesterton, with you is that what you call evil, I call good. I was dumbfounded. He looked at me for a longer time, without a word, and then walked away into the shadows, into the night. I stood there watching him go, and I realized I was at a crossroads. One way was to follow him and his devil worship, riding over a world seeking only the own pleasure, believing and living off the lies that fell out of the mouth of the father of all lies. And the other way was to love God and to follow him. And what really scared me most was that I had to stop and think. I left immediately, but as I got to the bottom of the steps, I turned a corner, and there I heard my associate and his most vile companion talking together in an alcove. I ducked into the shadows. His associate said, "Did you do it? Did you kill him?" I stayed very quiet. My associate said, "No, I didn't do it tonight, but I found the place, and I will do it. Because you see, if I do that one thing, if I kill a man, I will not know the difference between right and wrong, and I shall be free." And then I realized that I was truly among devil worshippers. I went back to my room, I packed my things, I left that school, never to return. Although I attended several lectures before I left, but I never received my degree. You know, I heard that young man later killed himself. He did it with the tools of pleasure, not of pain. Poor lad. I know the road he went down. And sometimes it shivers my spine to think of how close I came to losing my way by following his. And so I left school and I began to write all sorts of things. Poetry, books, mysteries, I do love those. Criticisms, essays. Here, I'll show you. My wife Frances, she gave me this to bring to someone on an interview of sorts. I've written notes on it. Yes, it's really my doodling bad. But the article's still there. Here it is. Mr. Chesterton has written over 80 books, including the Father Brown mysteries. I'm really rather proud of those. Several hundred poems, short stories, several plays. I'm not so sure that's correct. Over 4,000 essays for various newspapers, magazines, etc., etc. He always wants me to remember who I am, I suppose. But stories would just come pouring out of me. There was one time where I read a story about certain dour Puritans in England who were determined to close all English pubs. Gadzooks, can you imagine? And so I wrote a story about it. I think I have a poem here. You see, first I draw a picture, and that picture gets a subtitle of sorts, a caption. And I had this image of two men traveling across the country with a cart of ale, bringing it to people when the pubs had been closed down. The pub is so much more than a pub. It's a community center where everyone gathers for fellowship. And then that picture I drew turned into a poem of sorts. And I know I have it here somewhere. Oh yes, here it is. Feast on wine and fast on water, and your honor shall stand sure. God's almighty son and daughter, he the valiant, she the pure. If an angel out of heaven brings you something else to drink, thank him for his kind attention, go and pour it down the sink. That whole poem and caption became The Flying Inn, the book I wrote about Humphrey Dump and Captain Dalroy, who, when the government decided that no one should have ale or drink of any kind except for the very wealthy, these two men filled a handcart with a barrel of ale and traveled shire to shire, making sure the working class man could have his ale and there could still be pubs. Though I don't know, stories just seem to come to me. Oh, here's more. St. George he was for England. Before he killed a dragon, he drank a pint of English ale out of an English flagon. For though he fast fight readily, in hair shirt or in mail, it isn't safe to give him cakes unless you give him ale. Oh, here's one I really do like. It's called The Donkey. Pardon my indulgence. When fishes flew and forests walked and figs grew upon thorn, some moment when the moon was blood, then surely I was born, with monstrous head and sickening cry, hee-haw! And ears like errant wings, the devil's walking parody on all four-footed things. The tattered outlaw of the earth, of ancient crooked will, starve, scourge, deride me. I am dumb, I kept my secret still. Fools, for I also had my hour, one far fierce hour and sweet. There was a shout about my ears, and palms before my feet. Yes, the donkey. Perhaps I wrote that one about myself, maybe. Amused that such an ungainly creature could carry the burden and the gift of orthodoxy. Oh, I won't read this. It's very long. It's my contribution to English saga. I wrote it upon seeing the white horse carved in chalk in Berkshire, where the battle between King Alfred and the Danish king took place. If you don't know England very well, just under the grass in most of England is chalk, white chalk. And so on the hill in Uffington, they've actually removed the chalk till it filled the hillside with the outline of a horse, the white horse, which was put there to commemorate the successful driving off of the Danes. And so I wrote this poem for it. Just bear with me, I just want to read a little. Before the gods that made the gods had seen their sunrise pass, the white horse of the white horse veil was cut out of the grass. Before the gods that made the gods had drunk and done their fill, the white horse of the white horse veil was hoary on the hill. Age beyond age on British land, eons on eons gone, was peace and war in the western hills, and the white horse looked on. For the white horse knew England when there was none to know. He saw the first or break or bend. He saw heaven fall and the world end. How God, how long ago. Oh God, how long ago. My wife, Frances Alice Blogg, my bride, my rescuer. Frances never allows me to mention her in any of my lectures or any of my books, and I respect her desire to stay out of the limelight. But I wrote that rather long poem, The White Horse, and I dedicated it to her in a very tricky way, so only she would know. She is my lighthouse, cutting through the thickest fog to bring me safe to harbor or to a deadline, generally with both shoes on and matching socks. Unless I sneak out of the house in my slippers, then I get away. When the neighborhood children come by my study window singing their siren song, and I heft my slight frame out of the casement, besmirch my face with umber, and stick feathers in my head so that the children and I may whoop and howl all along the streets in Beaconsfield like savages. It is Frances who comes and finds me, brings me home, sets me back to work, and does not release the other Beaconsfield savages until she has given them lemonade and cookies. Ours was a marriage of great joy and mirth, also great sorrow. She wanted children, you see. Frances grew up in a very large home with lots of children, lots of noise, but it was not to be. I think when I first met Frances, I think it's safe to say that I was in the darkest of darkest places, as if I was swimming up from a murky ocean towards that speckled light on the surface, like Dante in those dark woods. But Frances was really living the tenets of her Christian faith. I didn't know yet what faith was. I knew there was a God, and I was hanging on by the thinnest thread of gratitude. But Frances was going to church regularly, taking care of the sick, taking care of the elderly. She had a poetry society, a debate society. She was luminescent with grace. But she could not have children. Oh, dear. Oh, my dear. She went to examination after examination, surgery after surgery after surgery. Still nothing. All our hopes dashed every time. We would pray with our hands intertwined. Pray for a child. And every time, it was not to be. Many women who go through this burden become angry with God. They become jealous and envious whenever they see a family out playing in the playground with each other. But not Frances. Frances accepted with gratitude that this was the plan that God had for her life. It was beyond me that she could do that. Father Knox once said that Frances was like an Amazonian queen, brave and courageous. And indeed she was. She turned that pain into something beautiful. She invited every child of the neighborhood to our house, and with their families and their uncles and their aunts, and there was noise again. Children running up and down the stairs, throwing buns at me so I could catch them in my mouth. Putting on plays. We did so many plays with the children that it soon began to feel like we should start a theater company. The Top Meadow Troupe, I suppose. It was Frances who, through this magnanimous and amazing, selfless and courageous love, that led me to Christ and helped me understand that relationship. Never again in cloudy talk shall life be tricked or faith undone. The world is many and it is mad, but we are sane. We are one. Pardon me. And so, I entered the church. You know, the difficulty of explaining why I am a Christian is that there are 10,000 reasons, all amounting to one, that Christianity is true. The church is the only institution that has the audacity to say there is truth and promote that truth. The church is not a meeting place. It is a trysting place of all the truths of the world. And you can find that truth, as I did, by searching everywhere else first, or you can save yourself that stupendous effort and open the church door first. But going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than standing in your garage makes you a car. One must commit to the arduous task of a thing. One must love a thing very much if they do it without any hope of ever doing it well. You know, I began this evening telling you a story about my little toy theater. What I should have said is that everything I learned about the magnificence and miraculousness of life, I learned from that little toy theater. A sense of wonder and gratitude at this gift given to me on my birthday that I would continue opening for the rest of my life. The wonder of a child. And I have tried to maintain that wonder my entire life. For after all, did not our Lord say that you must become like little children if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven? Oh, heavens. Oh, sorry, I've been talking so long, I've forgotten where I was. I suppose my train's getting ready to board. I probably should put my things together. I'm not a very tidy person after all. Well, you know, I don't think I really need all these things where I'm going. Yeah. One moment, hold the train. You see, one time when I was traveling, I decided to walk home from Oxford. It was pouring rain. It's not a very long walk, but I was drenched. And I came upon a man, and I said, is there a train station around here? I need to get to London. And he said, oh, yes, there's a train station right up that hill. So I hiked up that hill. It was like the hinterlands, a tiny little hut in the Andes. And no one was there, so I sat down and I waited. And pretty soon a train did pull into the station with all its lights off. Very peculiar. And so I walked out, I lit a cigar, I walked on, I sat down. And the train took off. But still no lights and no other passengers whatsoever. Halfway through the trip, the train stopped in a field. And the conductor, all smoky face, and the engineer came down the ladder and walked back to my window and rapped on the window and said, excuse me, sir, would you like to take this train all the way to London then? I said, well, yes, of course, I actually would. Are you sure? You see, there's a dead man on board. What we're bringing is coffin down to London for burial. You still sure you want to take this train, sir? And I said, yes, I do. I stuffed out my cigar, though. I thought that was polite. And when I got to London, I got out of the train, I walked onto the platform, and I looked back, and I could see the conductor, the engineer, the spokesman, slowly wheeling this coffin off the car. And there, a very solemn, respectful moment for the dead. And here, everyone walking, coming and going through the station, busy with their lives, not realizing how close they were to that veil. I hope that you will be ready when the train of the afterlife comes for you. I hope you'll be better packed than I was. Let me close with this. The critical thing in life is whether you take things for granted or whether you take them with gratitude. And gratitude is only happiness, doubled by wonder. And as I think that thanks are the highest form of thought, I thank you all for allowing me to spend this little time with you on my own trip in the afterlife. Ah! Eureka! Well, I suppose I should be going now. But like I said, I don't feel I need all these things. I cut a staff in the churchyard copse. I clad myself in ragged things. I put a feather in my cap that fell out of an angel's wings. I filled my wallet with white stones. I took 3 foxgloves in my hand. I slung my shoes across my back, and so I went to fairyland. Cheerio, my friends! Hold that train! Hold the train! Oh. All glory to God. Thank you. Oh, shoot.
We're going to have a time of question and answers, assuming Chesterton returns to us. After the question and answers, we have some birthday cake to celebrate the 150th birthday of Chesterton, born 1874. And the cake, I will assure you, is not 150 years old. So, Chesterton, will you be returning to us to answer some questions? What we've done is we've put some microphones here, but 5 minutes? Okay, he's going to take 5 minutes. So, I could probably answer some questions. That I cannot answer. So, you know, one interesting thing is that the Slade School of Art, where Chesterton went, that is the same place that Alfred Hitchcock went. And at the Wade, we actually have, and you can come to the Wade Center, it's on the corner of Washington and Lincoln, so it's just adjacent to Edmund Chapel. We have some of the chalk drawings that Chesterton has done, and we actually have some of the, some videos of, well, film clips of Chesterton. Chesterton was very interested in film, and he and George Bernard Shaw, if you are familiar with that name, acted in a film in about 1921, so it was a silent film, and they played cowboys. And George Bernard Shaw is famous because he was very tall and skinny, and Chesterton, we had a good sense of Chesterton. And there was this one incident where
Finish the story.
Okay, where Chesterton, and you may have to amend the story, but as I remember it, Chesterton goes up to Bernard Shaw, tall and skinny, and said, "Sir, to look at you, one would think that there was a famine in England." And Chesterton, let's say,
Sir?
and Bernard Shaw responded, "Yes."
You might have caused it.
Yes.
Chesterton Shaw came over one time, I think, and Chesterton was laying on the floor trying to draw on the ceiling with a pole because they thought the ceiling was white and so open for drawing. And Shaw was like, "You look like something that should be rolled back into the sea." Always teasing him about his weight. In fact, he wanted Chesterton to write that play, Magic. And he told him if he didn't write it, he would steal his wife, Frances. And torture Belloc. All right, anyway, that's just, I like chatting with Crystal, I'm sorry.
John Walker has agreed and to answer questions. If you want to come up to one of these mics, if you have any type of
Anything at
question.
all, about the show, about how it came together, anything at all.
About being an actor, about Chesterton.
Or school,
Thank
or acting,
you.
or movies. Or...
Where did your interest in Chesterton come from? Like,
Where did my interest?
Yeah.
I had no idea who he really was. I left Hollywood on a situation that was faith-based. I couldn't do the kind of projects they wanted me to do. And when you turn down a $500,000 project in Hollywood, you don't work again. So I was up in Vermont being a farmer, and I really missed acting. I really missed being on stage. So I thought I should write a play. I should write a one-man show that I can control the content myself. But who about? And so I was sitting there and watching TV with my kids. We only had one channel, public television, and because we're in the woods in Vermont. And a Father Brown series came on. I went, "Father Brown? What the heck is that?" I bet it's Hollywood making the priest look like an idiot. like all Christians are idiots and the bad guys are cool. And I watched it. It was the opposite. Father Brown was a hero, and I thought, whoa, that's pretty cool. Who wrote that? And so I'm looking at the screen. I see, from the Father Brown stories of Chesterton, of G.K. Chesterton. I went, I should find out who that is. And then I went and got the book, and I found another book in our dilapidated library. And I suddenly started to wonder, maybe I could play him. And when I read he was 6'4", 300 pounds, and I gained all this weight for the role. It was a real struggle, but I take my work very seriously. Because when I first started doing Chesterton, I had black hair and a black beard. I was 50 pounds lighter. But then I read he was 6'4", 300 pounds, and I read he carried a sword cane. I was like, oh, that's it. I'm in. And then I thought, well, I'll just read everything he ever wrote. And I still have, I don't know, ever touched that iceberg because there's so many things. But that's where it first started. Because I thought if I worked on a one-man show, I would feel like an actor again. Because I knew I could never go back to the big leagues again. And then I dreamed of maybe doing it on a theater someplace, you know, so. Yeah, and here I am. So, you know, Chesterton's laughing hysterically right now, tugging on God's robe. Let's make John go to Wheaton. Wheaton College, he can, you know, send him. So, anyway, sorry, that was a long answer.
Thank you.
I was wondering where you're from, because your voice is very different than, you know, your Chesterton accent. So.
Is it really? Honest? It's worse. If you heard the twang I got, then you'd really be upset. Yeah, West Texas sticks. Hook 'em horns. Yes, ma'am. I knew this wonderful woman who taught at Oxford, and she coached me. We had to go through a ton of archival kind of radio stuff to find out what his voice sounded like. And then we discovered it sounded like a famous gentleman of his time, Ernest Shackleton, the explorer. They sounded a lot alike. And so I worked on it a lot, repeated it, listened, mimicked it. It's kind of like if I say hand, he says head. If I say bad, he says bed. You know, it's just a different thing. It had a little lisp, too. So when I say, you're no doubt puzzled to see me taking up this space that loans the much space. So, yeah, it came a long time in coming. But the greatest thing, I did a show a little while ago somewhere, I can't remember. I've done like 12 shows in the past year. And this lady came up to me and said, that was a lovely show. And I went, oh, thank you very much. She went, you're not from England. And I said, no. And she said, I thought you were. The accent was so good. And I was just like, yes! All right. Yes?
What kind of cheese was it? And as a follow-up, what cheese do you
Oh, my gosh. The cheese. The horrid cheese. Okay, so there's a lot of stories about the cheese. It's supposed to be Stilton, but I Googled up which cheese is the easiest to chew, so I wouldn't choke and die in front of you. Although if I was going to die, center stage would be good, I guess. So that was Gouda, which I picked up today, and it was horrible. The most horrible tasting thing I've ever put in my mouth. And I've been to Norway. All right, so I know what reindeer stuff is. Yes. And so anyway, that cheese has evolved. The first time I did it, I got cheddar, because, you know, what other cheeses do white guys from Ohio get? So I got cheddar, and when I bit into that, it crumpled. And I couldn't, like, swallow it and drink it and talk. It was just like, and as I was talking, it was like, and people weren't laughing. They were going, we should leave, honey. And so I said, okay, that's no good. So I got Swiss. And Swiss tastes like, I don't know, rubber. So you're chewing it for hours and hours, waiting for it to die so that you can continue. But the worst time was that I had bought cheese, a cheddar piece, a little square. I finished the play, and I cut off another square and put it in my suitcase for the next play, which was the next night in another city. But I didn't know there was a piece of cheese in there from like 6 months ago. Yes, you see the problem. And I was on stage in front of an audience, and I picked up that 6-month-old cheese without noticing the little green circles. And I took a big bite, and as soon as it hit my tongue, I knew I'd done something very wrong. I had put hell in my mouth. So the cheese had a lot of story, but today's was Gouda, and fortunately I bought it this afternoon, but it was really hard to chew. So, and it was garlic. I didn't read the label. So when I put it in my mouth, it just exploded with garlic. And I was almost like doing Chesterton for the rest of the night, like, let me tell you about the story. About this train. It come in the station, it was all dark. I get on the train, it's still dark. So yeah, that's the story with the cheese. He loved Stilton, by the way, though. He was a big cheese eater. Be happy in Wisconsin. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the first isn't a question, it's just a statement.
Oh.
Smoked Gouda is really good. Did you get smoked Gouda? Smoked Gouda?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you get smoked Gouda? Because it's really good.
No.
I think the plain would be...
Yeah, I'm a good actor, but I am not a good cheese shopper.
Okay, all right. Now
I need help.
I have a question.
I need a guide to walk me through the supermarkets. Yes.
Okay, G.K. Chesterton, according to your play tonight, spoke very highly and kindly and wonderfully of his wife.
Oh, yeah.
Did she pass before he did, and did he have to live without her?
Crystal, I think Francis lived about 5 years, maybe 6 years. Who knows? Someone up there moved.
I looked it up.
What do you got? Oh, we can look up anything now. What is the nuclear fission model? Oh, look at it.
She was widowed on the 14th of June, 1936, and died on the 12th of December, 1938.
So 4 years. Or 2.
So she was...
Math? Anyone? Wait, there's a calculator. 2.
Well, the way he talked about her, I thought he was going to say that she had passed and how much he missed her.
No.
But it
I'm
was-
doing a show called Chesterton Station that we film. It's in the afterlife. He's on a train and all that. And we're waiting to the last season where she shows up. And then he goes to heaven. And then the whole thing is that he was waiting for her all that time.
Oh, okay. Okay. Very sweet.
But he really, she picked his clothes. She helped him get dressed because he was completely not there. He was walking away thinking of amazing, wonderful, beautiful things and writing poetry without shoes on in the middle of the street, stopped in traffic. So Francis actually steered the ship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
There's a wonderful book by Nancy Cartier Brown, The Woman That Would Be Chesterton. I think that's it. About Francis. When you read the story of her life, it's really amazing because you see how he became who he became because of her.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Just to double down on a question that was asked formerly, old bloke, I wonder how long did it really take you to enhance your vocabulary with our English?
Well, it took a long time. The problem, I don't know how many of you read Chesterton, of those of you who can read it without even wincing. But Chesterton is a very circuitous writer. Sometimes he writes and you read a page and you go, what? And you walk away. For me, not being the brainiac, but having the intellect of a Labrador with a bandana chasing a Frisbee, I had to read it, walk away, and think about it. But the more you read it, the more you got it. In fact, my own conversion coming into the church, because I grew up in a house of agnostics and atheists, but I knew that something was there. I used to hang out in this empty church at night when all my buddies and me would finish driving around. But I'd go there and hang out and talk to God. And Chesterton's thing about gratitude got me. When I would look down the pew and see my wife and my kids and realize how lucky that a moron like me ended up with that. And the gratitude is what pulled me towards Christ. That's Chesterton. So I don't know how long it took me to get the words. If you listen closely tonight, I'm sure there's many of you who realize that some words were made up and stumbled upon.
That's
So,
wonderful.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
I assume you're buying everybody a pint this evening
Oh,
afterwards?
absolutely. Absolutely. What else should I do but to leave? Yes, sir.
How do you explain your betrayal of all true West Texans by being a UT fan?
Well, I grew up in Boston before I moved to Texas. And so the fact that I'm even playing an Englishman and not throwing tea bags into the ocean,
Fair enough.
that's a real hard problem.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I did it in Texas. I did it in Tyler, Texas, and Wichita Falls this past year. I almost did it in San Antonio, but since it was as hot as the surface of the sun, I decided not to. I don't know. I'm an actor. You know, the job is to get into the role, whoever and whatever he is, find something about him that you like and play him seriously and honestly. And Chesterton, just once I started doing it, man, I couldn't put it down. So, yeah. And then I gained all the weight for the role. It was, Nice. Thanks. Yes, sir.
Okay.
No. I looked over here. He's got a really hard question. It's math.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Okay.
So.
This might be a bit of a longer one as well.
Okay, good.
But, okay. So, as kind of a little bit of an acting enthusiast myself.
Good man.
I really like the actors. You ever heard of the new Elvis movie?
Oh, yeah. Who's that?
Austin Butler.
Yeah.
I kind of admire the actors who really get into the method of it, like becoming their character. So my question is, how deep do you go into this Chesterton character in terms of feeling his actual emotions?
Let me drink some lager.
And have you ever come away from a play thinking as though you were Chester, or even still speaking in his accent for the first little bit?
Well, you know, the method is something that all actors started doing back when Chekhov and Stanislavski first started doing the Moscow Art Theater. It's nothing fancy. You just read the background story. You think about what your character wants, what he's afraid of, what he's doing, what he did before he came on stage, and you bring that on stage honestly and vulnerably and real. If that's the method, that's what it is. And I did that a lot. In fact, I remember when I first started playing him, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I bought a 3-piece Victorian suit. Oh, this is Pepsi, by the way. And you know, I don't know about you, but when I got to be a big fat guy, and I would get dressed, suspenders, buttons, cufflinks, pin-on collar, ties, high collar, it was like, and me, I would get like, son of a gun, this stupid shoe, bring me my Skechers. I would get really angry at these clothes and how hard they were to put on, and I thought to myself, Chesterton would be laughing. And that little moment of kind of dressing the character in my life and walking around as him really taught me a lot about my own toxic negativity at stupid things and how Chesterton would find joy. There was a guy he had, a buddy of his, who said, he was at his office, he was trying to open the desk drawer. And it's like, this desk drawer always stinks. I hate it, Chesterton, I can't open it. He goes, why don't you pretend that your best friend is hanging off a cliff and you are holding onto his arm? And you slowly pull him up, and the guy's like, I've saved him! You know, Chesterton turned every frustration into an adventure, into a joy, and that meant a lot to me and something I wanted to embrace, and that was just from trying on clothes one day. So method, yeah, I guess so. I listen to his music. Before I come on stage here, I listen to every song he might have listened to back in his time. I sing his music. I talk about him. I have phone conversations with people as Chesterton. Yeah, that's why they don't turn the mic on. They would hear me incessantly praying or talking British all night. All right, so thank you. Yes, sir.
I don't have a math question right now.
Thank the Lord.
I was going to ask if you have a favorite Chesterton story.
A favorite Chesterton story? Oh, man, there's just so many of them. And if you go to the Wade Center, you'll find even more. I really love the relationship he had with Dorothy Sayers, the detective club. I really was amazed by that because she was such a courageous woman at a time when courageous women were looked down upon. But I think, that's a Churchill story. That's a good Churchill story, though. Mr. Churchill, you are drunk. Miss Ascot, you are ugly. But tomorrow I will be sober. Yeah. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone into Churchill. Yes. Sometimes I do the play and I start talking like Churchill. It's horrible. I got on a train. I think I love the story about Chesterton filming a silent movie with James Barrie about cowboys and Indians. With George Bernard Shaw, some parliamentary figures, you know, a silent movie. That they went out there with guns and ran around like kids playing cowboys and Indians when they were in their 40s or 50s. The child was still alive in him. Not childish, but childlike. You know, that still has a wonder and a marvel and, you know. I like that. I like that story.
Can I ask where we might find that?
Where could you find it?
Yeah.
Me in my pocket. No. I would look in Orthodoxy. I think it might be one of those stories. It could be in Tremendous Trifles as well. Those are great little short essays that you can read very quickly. It's one of the first books I got because it was almost a coloring book. And I figured that was on my level.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Speaking of our relationship, you touched on, or Chesterton touched on in the show, what was Belloc's influence on Chesterton like?
Oh, gosh.
Particularly in
I think it was huge.
His coming into the Catholic
Yeah,
Church.
I think it was
what other
huge.
influences?
I think it was huge in his writing and in his poetry and in his faith, because Belloc was a pit bull in the church of faith and writing. He never backed down from an argument. In fact, sometimes he took arguments too far. But he and Chesterton would drink a lot together, which is not good. I remember there's a famous story. Belloc came to his house for Christmas and he banged on the door, and Chesterton opened the door, and Belloc went, "God bless all in this house!" Boom! And fell down right on the floor. And Francis was like, "Who's at the door?" He's like, "It's Belloc, dear." But I think Belloc, when Chesterton says Belloc had more to do with making me who I am than I had to do with making him Belloc, I think that was exactly it. I think Belloc gave Chesterton courage to simply say the truth and to stick by it, because the Christian faith was not at all popular in England since Henry VIII. You know, it has had a lot of problems, and I think Belloc gave Chesterton the courage to speak the truth and to not back down, which in a time when the supernatural and the occult was more interesting to people, that took some guts. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I have two questions. The first one is, what was his favorite hymn? And the second is, what was his favorite Shakespeare play?
False. Okay. His favorite hymn, I think it was the one I played, God Beyond All Praising, because it's mercies without end. And it's also the British coronation song, so it was very British. And his favorite Shakespeare, I can't say it in a theater, but it is the Scottish play. I'm just saying that for anybody that's coming into this theater ever again that wants to do that play. I'm an actor. I don't believe in the superstitions. I'm faithful to the traditions. But he loved that one. He absolutely loved it. But his favorite character was Falstaff. Yeah. He loved Shakespeare. I see you coming. Yes?
I'm wondering how many of the ideas and stories in your act are based on like real stuff you know about Chesterton or like events that happened, and how much of it was speculation or just creative liberty?
It's all out of his books. Most of the words are his. There's very little of John Walker in that play, except for maybe in some of the transitions where I'm trying to connect two different thoughts, but almost all the words are all his, which made it really difficult. But made it a joy to do. It was trying to get those words to fit in my mouth and to also try to maneuver through the whole piece that was really tricky for me. It's like 80 pages in my head. I don't know what I do with the rest of my brain. But
We'll do these last two questions and then we'll break, and John Walker will be out at the reception, so you can come if you have additional questions and ask him.
Absolutely. Yeah, anytime at all. Just walk right up to me and smack me in the head and ask a question. Mr. Norton.
As you're preparing to play Chesterton, you're reading his works, how much of his philosophy and his theology starts sticking with you? Oh. So you're no longer being an actor, you're at home farming or whatever, and you're thinking about orthodoxy and his thoughts on imagination, and it's no longer just a character you're playing, but it's a motivation in your worldview.
All the time. I mean, when you were out here before the show, you said a little bit about imagination. And I suppose that's the summer conference thing. And I was like, wow, this is a perfect play. The whole first section is about imagination. I'll tell you, when I first started memorizing, there were words that had to sound a certain way and go a certain way. And now they have been all connected to my faith journey completely. How I teach theater. You know, I tell the kids all the time, theater is a parallel. You know, you create a world. You create actors. The word becomes flesh when the actors take the page and they learn their lines. Like God creates a world, it's our parallel. It's our way of acting like God on the sub-level because we're made in his image. We're made to be creators. I mean, and all that came from Chesterton. So everything in my life, including my marriage, how I treat my children. I think that might be true, Matt. Thank you, son. Who dressed up with me in the woods as a child and ran around as Aragorn and scared all the farmers. Everything that I've been saying that once was lines has now infused itself into my life outlook. And my faith has become richer, and I've become less of a jerk, and I've seen beauty more often. And I used to play a lot of bad guys because I was a big guy in Hollywood. So I was bigger than everybody. I mean, most movie stars are this tall, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Tom Cruise, and Brad Pitt, Johnny Depp, good friend. So I played big bad guys. And my wife would say, "What play are you doing?" I'd say, King Lear. "Who are you again?" "I'm Cornwall." "What does he do?" "He gouges out an old guy's eyes and tortures him to death." And she goes, "Oh, well, because you're so mean. I don't like, you're listening to like 9 Inch Nails all day. You started smoking. You're like, when are you going to play someone nice?" And it was a few years ago or something. I was in the midst of a Chesterton thing. Goes, "I really like this character you're playing. You're so nice all the time." I went, "I don't become the characters I play. Really?" So it's funny. It's not because of being a method actor. It's because he's so brilliant in his insight into faith and joy and wonder that you can be totally changed by it. And absolutely did. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yes, sir.
So you were just addressing the concept of subcreation, creating like how God does, and you just brought up Aragorn. And I couldn't help noticing that Chesterton is more than a little hobbit-like in some ways.
You don't think he's Bombadil?
That's a fair point. I still don't know.
I don't know either, because Bombadil has this alter ego that's this animal, strong, and Chesterton loved the battle. He walked around with a sword cane, So I don't know, but yeah, I think C.S. Lewis is more Hobbit-like. And I think Chesterton is like Bombadil, always joyful, always laughing. But, we're apples and oranging here. We're talking about Narnia, we're talking about Middle-earth. They're very different. And, being a Narnia fan, since I can remember when, I tend to go there. But, yeah, anyway, so I'm rambling, I'm sorry. You got me into a world.
My question is, do we know to what extent Tolkien enjoyed and appreciated Chesterton's works? I mean, he must have talked about it with Lewis. They were.
But Chesterton, he wasn't an inkling. But he had a huge influence on C.S. Lewis, and C.S. Lewis was an inkling. A lot of Tolkien's writing came out after Chesterton died, but Tolkien was in World War I, where Chesterton lost his only brother, Cecil. So I don't know where those roads connect, but I don't think it takes a whole lot of research to find out, and I think there's some connection back there. Look at the Wade Center.
Yeah, at the Wade Center, George MacDonald was read and valued by Lewis, Chesterton, and Tolkien.
Yeah.
And MacDonald was a fantasy writer, so that might be one way to answer your question.
Oh, that's why I mentioned MacDonald when I talk about the little theater.
Yeah.
Blue goblins to cheer the heart of George MacDonald for all those literary nerds out there.
Let's give John Walker another round.
Thank you kindly. Thank you very much. You are very kind.
And help yourself to cake. Let them eat cake.
Yep, I'll see you out there in a minute. Adios. Bye.